Leadership Story Talks, where we discuss the practices that engage, motivate, develop, retain, and attract people to businesses. We'll give you principles and tools based on real-world stories to leverage listening and storytelling to become a better leader and management professional. Leadership Story Talks is produced by Narrative, a company that focuses on personal storytelling for business.
Welcome to Leadership Story Talks. In this podcast, Julienne Ryan and I, Jerome DeRoy, discuss ways in which we can create more engagement in our lives, especially at work. There are more people today who identify as disengaged at work than there are people who say they're engaged at work. We come from Narrative, which is a company that focuses on engaging businesses wherever they are and whoever their audiences are through the power of listening and storytelling. And we employ a 7-step method to do so. Now, in this podcast, we cover a lot of different topics around engagement, and we've had a lot of different guests. And today I'm really happy to be with Jules again. And it's just me and you, Jules. And I know that you have a lot on your mind. Yeah. So you want to kick us off?
This is what's great about these podcasts. I get to share what I've been thinking about and how are we going to solve some challenges. And one of the things that's top of mind is all the news about with the market is changing. There's been some significant layoffs. And what's come to mind when I was thinking about is there's never been a more important time to really use the act of storytelling in your work as an employee, as a leader, because when we learn our stories, it is an immense, important market differentiator about how we can talk about our skills and talents. And what have you been finding as you've been chatting with people lately, Jerome?
Well, you know, that word differentiator is something that just kind of sparked something for me, because I do feel like you that, you know, a lot of people are a little nervous right now. There's some anxiety because of, you know, market fluctuations, and the R word is being used. And especially if you're in the tech world, it must seem very real, because, you know, that was a world that for the last 2-3 years seemed untouchable and which was just going up and up. And now we're hearing about layoffs. So that word differentiator, I think, is more important than ever. And the stories you tell about yourselves are what is going to, that's what's going to differentiate you at the end of the day. You know, your story is yours. It's uniquely yours. As something that happened to you in your experience didn't happen to somebody else, even if it relates to what's going on with a lot of other people, right? But your experience is unique. So tell stories about that as a way to stand out. I think, you know, that's really the thing that you just made me think of right now.
Mm-hmm. First, it can keep you grounded. If you start to use your story to remind yourself where your gifts are, it is a very good tool to say, here's where I'm unique, because your latest job is not your whole life. Your experiences are a whole aggregate of what it took to get you there. And I find sometimes when I've worked in transition a lot with outplacement and coaching, that our clients' brains would shut down when they were just looking at their resume in terms of situation, action, result. However, when they start to explain their life in stories of things they were proud of, things that they really did well at or showed immense resilience, lots came out of amazing data that they were able to parse down into sound bites as needed for certain conversations. And it also helped ground them in their resume, what they should be leading with, not what somebody's telling them they should do, but something that they really felt strong and confident, and that would be projected into their interviews, where they were sitting across a desk from me or they're sitting in a screen. And I think that's something that we can get distracted about. And likewise, it's also a great motivational tool for your team to remember what they're very good at when you're sitting in a department. And to curate examples of accomplishments and use it. It's I call it a cheap and cheerful tool for motivation, telling people what they're good and having them hear themselves tell them their accomplishments on a regular basis.
You know, one of the best advices I got was from a career coach that said to me, you know, I want you to think about the experiences that made you feel good, or that made you feel a preferred way that you would like to feel, So for example, I want to feel confident. I want to feel empowered. I want to feel assertive, all of these kind of positive ways of being. First, you think of that for yourself. And then you think of experiences where that happened. And then you start to unpack that story. And it was really great for me because it brought me back to experiences. I thought of a time when I won a tennis match. My first tennis tournament. I was 17 years old, and
Oh, wow.
it was my high school tournament, and I lost in the final, but I lost in such a way that I was really proud of, because I really gave it everything I got. And then the next year I came back and won. But it wasn't about the winning of the tournament. That's not what gave me the good feeling. The good feeling came from a place where I actually lost. The result was not a great one. And of course, I didn't feel great in the moment. But in my memory, it was a great experience, because I remember coming back and nobody was sort of thinking, wow, this guy's going to get, he's going to get 2 6 zeros. That's what 6 loves, that's what's going to happen. And it wasn't that at all. It was a very tight game, much tighter than what people thought. But that's the experience that I remembered, because it made me feel a certain way. And then, there were other ones in my career. But I think these stories that we have, it's the point you were making earlier that made me think of that. Because I think when we're in a certain career and we're in a trajectory, we only think about that box that we're in. And we're like, oh no, I just lost this job and that was my whole life. And now, I have to prove to a new employer that I'm good at this job, that I'm still good at this job despite this setback. And so I tend to look at my recent experiences in this particular sector that I'm in. But you can go back, all the way back in your memory, and just starting with that place of feeling really helps.
Well, I don't think I should trademark this, but I call your example something I would use as a connected dot. You use that example from the past, and then you show how it shows up, because that analogy say like that was losing but winning at the same time, and how you use that resilience to go forward another time in the future. And you didn't give up, and you were a class act. You gave it all you got. You left it on the floor, to how it shows up in your job and your accomplishments now. Now that is a much more visual example to give somebody who's been sitting there going through the resumes by the hundreds, and conversations where everybody starts to sound the same, and you lose the distinction. But an example like that lives on, because you can write it down in your notes. And as I used to say to many coaching clients, I can walk it down the virtual hallway or the real hallway later on, that day, that week, later, in the month when we were ready to present. I look at that notes and I'm like, oh, now I remember why that guy struck a chord with me, because he did X, Y, and Z. And I think he's worth looking into and exploring, especially when resumes are not most traditional versions and people have done eclectic things. Those stories do speak for you louder than any example you could give that's very cut and dry. And I'm telling this from experience. You have not lived till you've read hundreds of MBA resumes. They're like, okay, another one did strike. Tell me something new. Tell me something distinctive. Like everyone's taken the same class. So you have to stand out. And so you're helping yourself in the process, as well as the person who really does want to make a good match and a good situation happen. So it helps. It definitely helps. So thank you for that. And I'm thinking, when you're talking about me hitting a tennis ball like over the fence at the local high school, very powerful, stroke, but not the right direction sometimes. So I'm admiring the fact that you actually won in tennis. It's really good.
Well, and I think what you just said, is, I'm going to remember as a recruiter, as an employer, interviewer, I'm going to remember the guy who told me about the tennis match that he lost, but came really close. And then next year he won because of the lessons he learned, than the person who took the same class as 10,000 other people, right? And only talked about that class. So I think you're right. We have to be aware of that fatigue. It's like, it's like when you write your college essay, you have to sort of really think about those experiences that genuinely demonstrate who you are. Because at the end of the day, it's a very human exercise and everybody goes through it. And the people that interview you, they want to find out who the human being is in that resume. And you have to trust that everything that needs to be in your resume is there. And then it's up to you to tell stories about experiences that are not in the resume and that you can build on and that are going to stick in the other person's memory. But, at the same time, being genuine about it. It's not all about, the wow factor.
And you and I have been through this. We all have been through where we're just giving information, like reporting, and we did this report, and it's all of our energy is just flat. Ask us something we're really proud of and energized, suddenly the room changes, the energy changes, you're engaging. So I would ask people a long time ago when I was still recruiting, what's a job you walked away from? And you said, yeah, thank you, but no thank you, because I wanted to see what was some of the bullets that they didn't like, but also watch the energy. Because then I had like a test, retest later on. The other question I used to ask is your 2020 question, what went epically wrong? And that was a lesson that showed up today. Now, that's when I started to really tell stories, because I used to get a headlight, deer in the headlight look from somebody like, this is not my weakness question I was expecting. But what happened, I would tell some terrible experience I had as a new manager or something, and people start to relax. And they're like, I can't believe you're sharing that. But in the meantime, they start to pull things that really did go wrong and what they learned from. So trust formed in that room. And I was able to learn a lot more what made them tick. And again, advocate. And some of those people, actually one of those people was how I met you. I mean, they became a client later on, or a referral, because they didn't get the job, but they felt very respected and heard in the end. I just want to do a shout out of it. Thank you. But so it's that relationship you form in that conversation that matters. And the more you can reveal what really makes you happy and ticking, that's great. And you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't pay attention to that. Now, I know when it's stressful, you want to go into, get it done mode or something, but just give yourself time to remind yourself where your value added is and what lights you up. Because you're going to still be working or spending a lot of time pursuing a job or finding a space within your organization. Do right by yourself, is my guidance. Lessons learned, they were hard lessons, but they're worthwhile.
And I think there's something, that you're talking about that I just want to point out, is that, I was speaking mostly from my experience as someone being interviewed or working with people who are going to be interviewed, or in that process. And we kind of opened with that as well. And I think it's really important to highlight what you just did, which is that it's from the interviewer's perspective, the questions you ask to elicit that kind of energy that you're talking about, those things that make people tick, et cetera. Because, if you ask a question like, what's a moment that made you feel so proud, and you hear something that's kind of canned and generic, well, that tells you something about someone. But then, as you said, if you see the person light up about an experience that was really dear to them, then you're like, okay, this person is connected, and they're connecting with me in this moment. So I think, yeah, for people to kind of prepare themselves, but also whoever is listening to us out there that is in those positions, like you were, in that position of interviewing someone else and asking questions, think about the questions you ask to elicit those kinds of stories and experiences, because that's going to tell you a lot about this person that you're trying to recruit.
And one of the reasons of asking that question was, is somebody reflective? If somebody's learning by their mistakes, is somebody really ready to own, what things don't go right all the time, and even if it's about a prior job, if they're at a good place and they've made peace about why the change is happening, that is a person that's going to work well with their group and their team. So there's so many different reasons to not just sing your praises about what went right, but also where some of the challenges are, and use it as a connection tool to really advocate for yourself and say why you're resilient and gone through tough times.
Yeah. Great. Well, I think this is, again, a wealth of insights and perspectives for people who maybe are going through a tough time right now, whether it's because of these layoffs or just because it's an anxiety-provoking time. We're here to tell you that there's hope. There are ways to motivate yourself, and they're within you. your stories matter, and you have a way to tell them. Just connect with those experiences that made you feel a certain way, that feeling that you want to keep going with. There are stories connected to that, and it's going to resonate with others, especially employers and interviewers out there.
And lastly, having gone through a few recessions, there are opportunities that happen even in those times. I've been in an organization where we were letting people go. At the same time, we were also building out different parts of the organization. So listen to the news, listen to the reports, get savvy, but also do your own homework and keep digging, and find positive things to do that helps move your needle along to the direction you want to take your career.
Yeah, when a door closes, another one opens. Great. Well, we will certainly keep our ears to the ground as well, and really want to thank you, Jules, for these insights based on your own career and experiences. I think it's really, really valuable.
Hang in there. All right.
All right. Well, as always, I think it's a good place to remind people, thank you, first of all, for listening. And second, remind you to subscribe to the podcast wherever you find podcasts. And wherever you do find podcasts, there are usually ways for you to leave a comment, leave a review, like the podcast or the episode you just listened to. Those are great ways to create word of mouth and have more listeners that can benefit from these insights and perspectives of both me and Jules and our guests.
Yes.
And if you want to learn more about narrative and find more resources that are available to you, you can go to narrative.com, NARATIV.com. There you'll find all of our podcast episodes. Our entire archive is there, as well as our blogs. Absolutely. And us, our beautiful team, which consists of more people than just me and Jules. And so you can find out more about everyone there as well, and all of our work. And if you or your team want to learn how to find, craft, and tell compelling stories that are going to move your audiences in ways that you have never been able to do before, please contact us. And we are always ready to listen. Thanks so much, Jules. Thanks, everyone. And we will see you next time.
Thank you very much. It's a game-changing experience every day, but thank you. Till the next time. Cheers.
Bye.
For more information on the narrative listening and storytelling method and how it can help your business, go to narrative.com.